Let's do it.
All right.
Sam.
Okay.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. I'm excited. I was nervous about doing this because I feel like I've been bad at it myself. So it was a good motivator to dive back in, get remotivated, and now I'm excited about what budgets can do for my farm. And what's funny is, I'll start by saying I got a lot of my info and did a lot of my reading and reminding myself from this great book, Fearless Farm Finances. It was published by Moses, not the person. It's now called Marble Seed, the Midwest Organic Sustainable and Education Service. There's a lot of crossover on how to use QuickBooks in this, and it's okay if you don't use QuickBooks. I don't use QuickBooks, but it's written by people who know what they're talking about for business stuff, like MBAs, things like that. So rather than boring you with examples of my own farm, I decided to excite you with examples from a book put together by people who knew what they're talking about. But yeah, let's see. I'm just going to go through. So I have a lot of notes for myself, and I'll be referencing those. First thing I wanted to start with was to because I want to make this interactive. Because looking at spreadsheets is not fun for 2 hours. It is fun, but
Not 2 hours.
not 2 hours.
We really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I was still a little obsessed.
Okay, so I want you guys to think about the difference between different types of budgets. Like, what kind of different types of budgets do you use in your own life? Think about what you would budget in reference to a farm. Oh, what's left? Does anybody budget their personal life?
Everything.
Everything?
They're on spreadsheet.
Like what kind of stuff?
Paycheck, groceries, bills,
Mm-hmm.
that type of stuff.
Okay, so you're looking kind of like at how much money's coming in, how much money's going out, making sure you stay above zero.
Yes.
Yeah.
I structure mine and have it where certain things that are recurring and regular monthly payments that don't change go into one account and auto draft out of a steady paycheck.
Yep.
So that they get prioritized into one, and then the remainder for things that are variable go into a different account.
Mm-hmm.
And then fun times come out of a different account. So we have
Yeah.
4 accounts that we juggle. But most of them are on. She calls me and asks me what card he is.
Okay, yeah, totally. That's great. I mean,
It's
you're
a lot of
going to
fun.
be on your way. So, 2 things we're going to be talking about, the 2 main budgets we're going to talk about tonight. One is an income statement. And that is basically a snapshot of if your farm or your business is profitable. The other one that we're going to look at is cash flow, as a cash flow budget, and that tells you if you can pay your bills or not. And 2 different things, but 2 aspects of your farm finances that are really important, and we'll talk about kind of how they interact with each other. Before we get into that, I wanted to before I gave you, I have all of these printouts of different example budgets that we're going to talk through. I just wanted to see if we could come up with a list of income and expenses that you might see from a farm that you personally would want to have. So I'm just gonna, I don't know, let's start with, I think expenses, there's more of those.
Yeah, always.
There's always more of those. So, I mean, just start naming them off, what kind of expenses?
Fertilizer,
Equipment,
Land, seeds, dirt,
water.
water, equipment,
maintenance.
land,
We're good this one.
maintenance, labor,
Labor, for sure.
Packaging.
packaging. So packaging would be kind of in a realm of supplies.
Fuel.
Yeah, fuel is a big one.
Fees, farmers market fees, things
Yep.
like that.
Insurance.
Oh yeah, now we're getting it. What else?
Drip tape. Electricity and drip tape.
So utilities in general?
Yeah.
Soil, if you're starting anything ahead of time.
Yeah. I mean, I would fertilizer in the soil.
And like
Soil
starting
tests.
in the
I usually
packages.
start with like starter trays and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think so that like that would kind of go in the same group as me as
Yeah.
packaging. It would be general supplies, trays. I heard other things that I forgot. But
Soil test.
soil tests.
Water test.
Fencing,
Yeah.
keeping the weeds
That
out.
should have been number one.
Yeah. What else?
Root cellars.
More specific.
Building materials.
Building materials. More specific.
Wood, nails.
Or yeah. Okay, well, so we can say projects. You know, like projects that you're going to do. That could be any kind of like equipment or building that you're putting on. What about if you take out a loan?
Oh, interest.
Interest.
Financing.
So this is something that we're going to talk about tonight. That like when you're talking about cash flow versus profitability, when do you count interest? And
Cash
when,
flow.
yeah, when you know, like when do you count interest only, and when do you count all of the loan? Because they come in different at different times. So like loan payments. Do you have anything else written down here that I thought was clever? Ooh, oh no, that's something else. Let's say you buy a tractor. Is that tractor going to remain new forever?
Maintenance.
So there's
Maintenance.
maintenance. But you know, let's say you buy the tractor and you use it for 10 years, and it poops out. Like each year,
Depreciation.
yeah, depreciation. So each year you're technically losing money, even though no money.
So is depreciation an expense?
It is, yeah. But it's an expense, it's not a cash expense, but it is a farm.
Like you can go on
profitability.
a Schedule F?
It does go on a Schedule F, yeah. Depreciation is something you need to worry about. And this might be, we can talk about this further, but this might be not only equipment, but buildings, sometimes even wells can be depreciated. It's anything that you're using on your farm that is expensive. And it's kind of gray as like what should be depreciated and what shouldn't be, but it's like any piece of equipment or thing you're using that eventually wears out and needs to be replaced and is sufficiently expensive to be worth the effort of depreciating. And so there's a little bit of gray area as to what counts as that and what doesn't. What about licenses? I suppose that kind of goes into
Yeah,
fees.
business licenses and stuff.
Yeah. So I mean, we've got a pretty good list. There's a lot of expenses that go into farming. I mean, there's like office expenses. You might need to pay for bookkeeping software. What?
QuickBooks.
QuickBooks, yeah. You might need to pay for somebody to do your taxes. All these things. If you decide to be organic certified, boy oh boy.
Fairbanks.
Hmm?
Is that hard on us?
Nothing against it, but it's money. It's real money. So I don't know if we need to make a full list of income, but obviously you're making money from like farm products, whatever you're growing, whatever you're producing. Do you make money from anything else?
Like process things that you create.
I mean, it kind of falls under farm. Let's think.
Actually in your land.
Yeah. I mean, you could like.
Oh, agricultural tourism.
Yeah, I mean, you could rent / I don't know, pimp your land. Pimp your land. That's not the right
I
word.
approve.
It's a good TV show.
At my farm.
There's gotta be a better
Listen,
word for that.
we could totally make that.
I'm gonna get canceled. Anything else?
So would side hustles?
Yeah, side hustles.
Like
I mean, you
associated side
can have
hustles?
jobs off the farm, you know, like other any of us have to work off the farm.
Like pumpkin patch.
Equipment rental.
Corn maze.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the equipment?
We talked about renting out equipment.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Renting out land, I mean,
Well, that's depending on.
oh, that's true, that was fucking land. I was thinking that exclusively in like
Is there a team here?
tourism.
Is there tea?
Equipment.
Yeah, is there
Equipment,
equipment?
yes.
Yes.
Equipment?
No,
No,
I thought
I
it was
don't
the
think
equipment.
so.
I think it's
Yeah.
equipment.
equipment.
Yeah, that's what
Equipment.
Yep.
No, absolutely not.
No.
I got
Absolutely, Mario the Chaos Monster.
We're just gonna leave it like that.
I think that's right.
It's EQUIPMET. MENT.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you don't call it equipment?
Ooh, okay, so I thought of a couple others. One I thought of was like conservation programs, so you might be with the NRCS. And get payments like that.
Oh,
Grants.
like if you conserve your land, to like put it in
So if you're
trust.
in like equip or
Oh, cool.
or what's the other one? Blanking on it right now. Doesn't matter.
Grants.
Yeah, grants. That's another one. I also have insurance payouts. Don't want that. But,
Unfortunate.
I mean, could happen.
Mm-hmm. That counts as income.
It might. This one I haven't dug deeply into. This you should write this down or remember it. It's IRS publication 225, Farmer's Tax Guide. It is terrible, but it has a lot of good information in there. They probably have some things to say about insurance payments. Definitely do. Okay, so this is just like a bunch of stuff. I just wanted to like get our juices flowing when we're thinking about budgeting. I'm gonna hand out this. This has a bunch of tables on it, and we'll just kind of go through them as different examples of different tables. Current spreadsheets, budgets, that. Okay. I love the fake name, the ought to be organic. It's the fake farmer's name.
Oh. Auto be organic.
So let's just look at this front page first, the skinny column one. And I'll send a PDF so anybody unfortunate enough to watch this later can refer to these as well. So on the left, this is an income statement. You might also see it as like a profit loss statement. And this thing is going to be most similar. I was going to pull this up and show you, but I actually can show you at the end. You've all seen a Schedule F. Or has anybody looked at a Schedule F?
We saw it last week for the first time, but I think
Okay.
some people were gone.
So a Schedule F is pretty much an income statement. What it tells you is if you are making money or not from operating your farm. It's if you're profitable or not. And I think thinking of the Schedule F as an example of it is useful because it's similar, but the Schedule F, there's a few things in the Schedule F that you treat differently than you would when you're just like wanting to know on a practical level if your farm is profitable, because you might finagle things around to bring yourself the lowest tax bill. And that doesn't exactly reflect what's going on in your farm. So at the very bottom, let's skip all the way to the bottom. So you see this is broken up, well, before we skip to the bottom, it's broken up into a couple sections. There's the income section, then there's the general expense section, and it totals up the expenses. Below that, there's a section called accrual adjustments, so we'll talk about that. That's something that I don't really do, but it's something you might do depending on what you're growing and kind of how you structure your business. And then depreciation is something that is also included into this. It's because, you know, if you use your tractor or your machinery for 10 years, and it's losing value each of those years, eventually you need to replace it. And so this kind of keeps track of, I guess, where you are in the life cycle of that, like how much of its value have you used away through your farming.
Is there a standard percentage for depreciation for farm equipment?
In relation to the IRS, yes, and I have that table on my computer that I'll show you later. For you, it's totally up to you.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think it's much more useful to think about it in terms of like your farm and your business plan.
Okay.
At the very bottom is, or just above the very bottom is this line that says capital adjustments. This is another thing that I think is optional. They're trying to be as comprehensive as possible. That accounts for if you like are selling or buying big pieces of equipment. Because it's something that you don't do every year. You know, like you're not buying a tractor every year, you're not selling a tractor every year. And if you don't make an adjustment for that income or loss, it throws off this profit statement. So it'll make one year look really good or really bad. And so this is just trying to like.
And so that says plus 2,000.
Yeah, so
That insinuates somebody sold.
yeah, in this specific example, what happened was the farmer sold a tractor for $6,000 and bought a tractor for $8,000.
I see.
Anyway, at the very bottom, net farm income is basically your profit after all of these things have been accounted for. Has anybody here ever filled out a Schedule F or thought about doing it for farming? You have? No? Okay. At the very beginning of a Schedule F, there is a checkbox and it asks you, is your bookkeeping cash or accrual? Yeah, I almost made a bad pun there for accrual.
What is it?
So accrual is, so the oh, it wasn't fully formed. That's why it was even bad. It would be, you know, a cruel fill in the blank, a cruel pun. Yeah. Anyway, I'll be here all week. So accrual means that you're recording your revenue and expenses not at the same time that cash is changing hands. And like, when might this happen in a farm business? Think about, let's say, for example, you are a wholesaler and you send, like $2,000 of cabbages to Fred's, and it takes them a month to pay you. In your books, you've recorded $2,000 of income at the time that you send those cabbages away, but it's separated from the time that you're actually making the money, and that's the accrual system. Your like you may, whenever your fiscal year boundary happens, there may be like outstanding things on either side of that year, and that's where this accrual adjustment section comes into play. And I'm not going to go deep into this because it's really complicated, or it's like not complicated, but there's a lot of things to consider. It's not something that I do personally, and so
you do cash.
I do the cash method, and this income statement is actually a little bit different from a pure cash income statement, in that it's an accrual adjusted cash income statement. So this would be in the case that you're accounting for things like, I sold $2,000 worth of cabbages before, but I haven't received that money, and I receive it in the next year, so I have to subtract off that income from that year's because it was actually accounted for in the previous year.
So we're going to ignore the accrual adjustment.
Yeah, I mean, just like know that it's like ameliorating for things, money that's changing hands at different times of the year to account for these differences. That goes for like things that you're prepaying for. That goes for money you're getting from your That goes for money that you're getting from
Sorry.
no worries. So things that you're paying for, money that you're getting from, you know, bills that people owe you. The way that I get around that is when I'm thinking about my farm's income, I set my like day one in May. Because that's like my farming season starts in May. I grow it, you know, grow through the summer, sell through the winter, and by the time next May comes around, I should have sold everything from the previous season. And so there's nothing outstanding from the last season, you know, that would be necessarily like if I set the cutoff at January 1st.
So, I'm sorry, did you say that you count your fiscal year differently than normal? Like, because
I mean, you can put the boundary anywhere you want, you know.
Okay.
The IRS wants you to do it January, you know, January 1 to December 31.
Oh, okay.
But you can set it anywhere you
For
want.
looking at your own farm business.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And it is tempting. I mean, like just looking at your Schedule F from year to year, it is tempting to like make kind of financial comparisons. But remember again that you may be doing things like, you know, sneaking in a big equipment purchase at the end of the year, or, you know, like depreciating one purchase in an entire year in order to bring your taxes down. And like that may not actually reflect, it may make the finances on your farm look much better than they are or much worse than they actually are. So I think that it's a good idea to like set the boundary line anywhere that makes sense for you. I think May is a good thing for Alaskan farmers because that's like when our season starts. Let's see. That's going to go down the bottom. Okay, so if you look at that bottom line, that net farm income, this includes, like I said before, that includes things like buying and selling big pieces of equipment. If you don't want to include things like that, you can you can omit that part of it and get just how much money am I making from operations. That has an acronym. There's so many acronyms in this. Net farm income, NFI. Then there's net farm income from operations, which is not looking at capital sales. And that is pretty much cutting off, starting at the accrual adjustment part and cutting everything off except for depreciation. And if you remove depreciation, because depreciation isn't actually a real cash expense, it's just like figuratively how much money are you losing every year as your equipment wears out. You can subtract that off and just look at, if you subtract that off, then you'll get what your farm cash from operation is in a year. Does that all make sense? Maybe not? Does anybody have any questions at this point? Okay. Let's dive into depreciation.
Cool.
Let's look at depreciation. I'm gonna erase this.
We were just experimenting, thinking about what.
I don't know.
Oh boy, one of those. This size better.
Last time it's been through some stuff.
Yeah.
That was not the product.
Okay.
Is it close enough?
Touch on, I mean, like, depreciation is a topic that is like, it's unnecessarily complicated. At the simplest level, depreciation is, let's say you buy something. This is going to be how much you depreciate, like your annual depreciation amount. It is simply how much you pay for something, so you have the purchase price. Minus, now this is where you have to use your discretion, whatever period of time that we're talking about here, so there's going to be like some lifespan. And this might be how long it takes to drive this thing into the ground, or how long you're going to be using it in your particular business plan. You know, let's say you want to look 3 years out, but you're using a tractor that'll last 10 years or 15 years. This value here is going to correspond to kind of when you're setting the boundary. So I'm going to say value at end of life. So an example might be, let's say you do a tractor and it's got a 10-year lifespan and you're killing it. 10 year to death. Let's say you spend 30 grand on it and it's worth nothing when you're done. So you kill it. So this is $30,000 divided by 10 years. Every year, you're going to subtract, or that depreciation amount is going to be $3,000. So that's what it's costing you to use this tractor on your farm every year that you're using it.
Now, in 10 years, if you do sell it for something, right, sell it for $5,000, do you have to do depreciation recapture?
In regards to taxes, yes. And that recapture is, so let's say you've used it for 10 years, you've fully depreciated it with the IRS, separate from your own bookkeeping, but two different spreadsheets you'll need to keep. Every dollar you make that's above the adjusted basis of that depreciated thing is income, like earned income that is taxed at the earned income rate, but it is not subject to self-employment taxes, which is nice because those suck. Yeah, did you?
I think I did, but I got totally distracted by her question. So let me try to rephrase this.
Yeah,
You're saying if 10 years goes by and I've written off $3,000 each year for depreciation, and then I sell that for $5,000, I have to report that. I can just report that as income. I don't have to go back and change my old tax returns. I don't have to edit my old tax returns.
No, you just report it as income.
That's it.
That's it.
Okay. What is the recapture thing? Is that?
That's it.
That's what that.
That's what recapture is. Yep.
Yeah, you've depreciated it, now you're recapturing that value.
Gotcha.
By reporting it as income.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, let's say you don't use it for 10 years, let's say you use it for half that, and or let's say 6 years you've used it, and you know, you've whittled it down to like $12,000, and you sell it for 15. You only have to count the difference between what you've depreciated and what you sell it for is the actual income. But this is all tax stuff that we're talking about right now.
Sure.
This is like bookkeeping.
Okay.
You know, from my perspective, I guess you want to make a reasonable estimate about like how much is this thing going to be worth when you're done using it. You know, if you think it has a salvage value, then include that. You know, maybe you can
Parts it.
Yeah, maybe you can parts it for $1,000. And in which case this would be $2,900. You know, maybe let's say that I'm just gonna get rid of this. let's say that you decide, you buy a $30,000 tractor and you decide, I'm only doing a 3-year business plan.
Uh-huh.
And at the end of these 3 years, I could turn around and sell that thing for $25,000. Formula remains the same. Whatever 5,000 divided by 3 is,
Uncomfortable number.
1,666. Yeah. Per year. So this is totally separate from taxes. This is just for your own, like this, what this number is telling you is to use this tractor, this is how much it costs you every year that you're using it for whatever business plan or like span that you're looking at.
And this is totally separate from parts and labor to maintenance.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep. This is just the value of the assets that you have that need to be replaced. And what would be real smart, not all of us do this, myself included, what would be real smart is if every year you put that much into a savings account so that at the end of 10 years or however long you're using it, you can just buy a new tractor in cash.
Nobody does that.
Nobody does that. Well, we wish we did that.
It's a nice thought.
Yeah.
It's cute.
At the end, once I fire my computer up, one of the things I have is from that IRS publication is their sheet of how long you should take to depreciate different things and the different systems that you can use to depreciate. I wrote it down, the acronym is, you'll see it all over the place, the MACRS system. It's the Modified Accelerated Cost Recovery System. There's different options to choose. I guess while we're on the topic of depreciation and kind of touching on tax stuff, there's also Section 179 that you can use, and that's really handy because you can choose to depreciate something all at once. Something that is like normally a depreciable asset, you can offset the cost all at once. And you may think like, why would I want to do that? I think this year or next year, I may do this with equipment that I'm getting via a grant.
So that you don't have to pay taxes.
So that I don't have to pay income taxes on the grant money.
It's just like on paper that this year's wash.
Yeah, it's like the grant money that came in is totally offset by the expenses.
Wow.
Because,
What publication was that?
225.
No, it's the second one. Or when you start.
175?
Oh, section 179 is not, it's a section of the tax code.
Okay, gotcha.
And you'll see it come up all the time when in depreciation.
Do you have an accountant?
I don't have
You
it.
do this all yourself?
I have been learning.
It's amazing.
It's slow. Something that I marvel on is, I bought this book like 8 or 9 years ago, and it's not that it was incomprehensible, but I just like didn't get why they were doing all the things they were doing. I didn't have the context. The longer that I farm and run a business, every time I come back to it, I'm like, that makes more sense. That's that's a useful number. I would like to know that too. Let's see, anything more on depreciation? We'll come back to that table from the publication. Okay. Let's look over at the table on the right is not an income statement, but that's a cash flow budget. And just spend a second like looking at and comparing the different sections because they're pretty similar. There's going to be an income section up at the top, an expense section in the middle, and then some extra stuff near the bottom.
Oh, just show these enterprises.
So is the cash flow, it's like for a constrained amount of time, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's a great point that anytime you're making a cash flow budget, you're going to define the time period. This one is an annual one, and I would encourage you, and I'll show you an example of one that I used in the past later, monthly cash flow, which I think is super useful for farming businesses. I don't think you need to get more fine scale than monthly, but maybe you would have a reason to do it at a weekly basis. But so you'll notice like the incomes, the income sections of the cash flow and the income statement, like the bottom line is the same. You know, they've parsed it out in a little bit more detail on the cash flow side, but the bottom line is the same. There are a few things in the cash outflow section that are not included in the income statement. One of those things is income taxes near the bottom. So income taxes are going to be counted as cash outflow from your checkbook, but you can't count income tax as an expense on your income tax forms. It would be lovely if we could do that. Let's see if I'm missing anything else in there. Notice how in the income statement you have interest on loans is an expense, whereas in the cash flow budget there's an entire section of cash flow from financing where you're not just doing the interest, but you're doing the whole payment, the premium, or the premium and the principal and the interest, because that's money that's flowing out of your checking account. You're also including you don't have to, but this example does, and I do, or I guess I did, and if I ever have off-farm income again, I will do that. I would think about including your off-farm wages in your off-farm income in your cash flow budget, because this is, unless you want them to be totally separate, which you might, but this is like, is my lifestyle plus farming keeping my bills paid? That's what that's answering. And this one, there's one line near the bottom, the living draw. There's a whole can of worms put into that one line. That's your entire personal budget. How much do you need to contribute to your household annually, in this case, to make it work? And so, this person is drawing $36,000. You need to decide for yourself. I mean, that's like a whole separate task, is to figure out how much money you need to supply your household. And if, for example, you can draw that much money from your farm, this is the place, because that's such a big line item that is kind of negotiable.
It literally means the money you're taking out.
Yeah, it's the money you're taking out of your business. It's kind of like your salary, almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just to be clear here, the parentheses are negative numbers?
Yes, exactly. Yep. Make sure I'm not missing any notes that I made. Yeah, I noted to stress that, notice how that land taxes are in both the income statement and the cash flow budget. So land taxes, like property tax, is something that you can use as an expense in your taxes, and it's something that is an expense of farming. Whereas just income, or both land taxes and income taxes are cash out of your pocket, for that cash flow budget. Notice how there's that section kind of under the main cash outflows. It's called cash from investing.
The one that's empty? Oh no.
Yeah, there's two things here. This is kind of unpacking that capital adjustment part from the other spreadsheet. But investing here, what it means is capital purchases and sales, and by capital I mean things like machinery, buildings, equipment. Those are like big purchases for the farm. That's an entirely separate section. In this cash flow budget, you don't necessarily need to have that in yours, just like ideas to get you thinking. What else did I say? Yeah, and the off-farm wages and the owner
Oh,
draw.
I see. That's the difference. That's why
Totally.
the capital adjustment is 2,000.
Yep.
Because capital purchases was 8,000. The sale was 6,000.
Yeah, I'm not convinced that that shouldn't be negative. That 2,000. I've found a few errors in this book.
Oh,
And
right.
I'm not entirely convinced that that's not an error.
Right. Okay.
There's some times where something doesn't make sense to me and I'm just wrong, but there are other times that I'm
That
wrong.
would make sense.
Yeah. Anyway, so looking at these two budgets, can you think about like, why would you want to know these different aspects of your business? Just think about that for yourself. So one is telling you that your farm is profitable from operations or not, and one is telling you if you can pay your bills. There are scenarios that a profitable farm, so a farm that's like making money from its operations, can have negative cash flow. And I want you to like take a moment to think and then like bring it up as you're thinking of it. When would that happen in a business? Think about a farm, your drought. So in that case, let's think that through. I guess I would argue that you might not be profitable in a drought year.
Right.
Yeah.
Would that be negative cash flow?
You would, so you,
Well, if you were only selling, making profit at one time a year,
Mhm.
but you had like mid-winter a bunch of payments come in.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, if you're like buying like a big load of seeds or something, that you're only doing like once or twice a year, but you're spending a lot that month.
Yeah, totally.
Big equipment purchases start of years.
Exactly. And can anybody think of a scenario in which having negative cash flow is a good thing?
Not taxes. It's never.
It's this. I mean,
Trick question.
yeah. It's not a trick question. It's not a good thing. It's having negative cash flow means you like your bank account is empty.
Right.
As soon as you hit zero, this is like you can think of your cash flow budget as like the account number. Or it's not the account number, but like the amount in your checking account. You go negative, you've overdrawn, and you don't have money. And so, there's ways to fix this. One is to avoid it entirely, and it's thinking about like, I've got a big seed purchase coming. Do I need to get an operating loan for that? Or can I spread that, like does it have to come at once? Or can I spread it out to different times of the year when like more income is coming in such that like my cash flow doesn't go negative? And this is why I think I'll show that example later of like that month-to-month cash flow budget is very enlightening to see. Like when I was setting that up myself, I realized like, oh shit, come June, I'm going into the negatives here. So I need to think about like, can I shift expenses because the income is pretty much set.
What expenses would you be shifting?
It's like, do I need, if I'm preparing for the end of the season, maybe I need to push off that big purchase until after I have income coming in, or this is a sign that you've done a poor job thinking through picking up debt.
Right.
So it's not a bad thing to pick up debt necessarily, but doing a cash flow budget beforehand will tell you if that debt is overstraining your finances. And if it is, you can either like pick up less debt, so make your your overall principal lower, or you can spread that payment out over a longer period so that the payments aren't crushing you. And these are things like the FSA, when you're doing farm loan applications, makes you do, which is great, because like otherwise you would not know that your business plan isn't working. So I highly encourage you to set up a cash flow budget. And it's really, you know, like this one is just one column for the whole year, but in Excel or whatever spreadsheet program you're using or on paper, you set up that column with all your categories, and then just January, February, March, April, just the whole year across the top, and each month fill out the columns. And you know, you might be leaving a lot of them blank for a lot of the year. It might be like you only make that purchase once a year, but you'll see kind of how your bottom line is changing as you go. And it's important to notice at the top of that how there's this beginning cash balance. You need to know how much money is in your checking account to begin the year. You know, it's a difference if you have, there's a big difference between 10 grand in your checking account versus nothing. This you might have a little bit of a buffer that you can float on. Other interesting scenario. I'll just point this out. Another reason that your cash flow might be negative is that you're drawing too much money out of the farm. Like, so your owner draw, your salary that you're paying yourself, is crushing the farm's growth. Yeah, that's another thing to consider. Can you guys think about a time when a not profitable farm, not a nonprofit, but a farm that is not profitable, will have positive cash flow?
It's getting investment.
Yep.
Someone's investing in it, or it's getting grants.
Anything else?
When you sell it,
I don't know.
I mean, that's the end of the road. I really liked the example they had in this book, that it was like, it doesn't have to be an older farmer, but somebody who has fully paid off their farm. They don't have any debt, their living expenses are low, and they're sitting on this cushion of money, slowly eating away at it. You know, every year they're turning a loss and chipping away at that buffer. And eventually, this is not a sustainable thing. Eventually, that plane has to land, and you'll run out of money.
So which of the
Oh,
farmers
look,
we've
yes, it's
seen,
happening to America.
which of our farmers have we met that sounds like to you guys?
Oh boy.
Sounds like Liz to me. She's farming, but she's not doing it for profit.
Oh,
And
yeah.
she said that. She's like, I'm not, it's a hobby farm. I literally operate as a loss. It's more like a nonprofit.
Yeah.
So basically, her off-farm income is keeping
Subsidized.
is keeping that place afloat. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's another example. So like, it's totally possible and likely, in fact, if you don't plan well, that you can have a perfectly profitable farm and business plan and go cash flow negative and go bankrupt. So like, planning that out is super, super important. You want to stay positive with your cash flow. And it's also totally possible to not be profitable, but to stay cash flow positive if you're subsidizing it, feeding it cash from some other source, be it grants, money from friends, off-farm work, whatever. That's probably a good place to take a break. Okay, let's turn that sheet over. And
I like Joey's zero prices on the bottom.
yeah.
It needs to be a little bit more profitable though.
So what did you call it, Kellen? You were you asked if we were going to look at
Oh, unit costs.
unit costs.
Costs of goods sold.
Yeah, you know, why don't we? I have that's a very similar thing to this, so I'm just going to skip to that, and we'll come back to these sheets.
I'll just say one for both. He doesn't have anything done.
So this is an example. Unit costs. The terminology they're using here is enterprise budgets, and it's basically. I think enterprise budgets is a way to find unit costs. Some people might call it cost of production. There's a bunch of different terminology you could use. This example comes from the book, and it's worth taking a little bit of time just to look through it. what this is doing is, an example farm is trying to come up with so that they grow on a bed system. They have 4 foot by 100 foot beds, and that's like their standard unit. And they want to know, like, when we grow beans, how much are we making on an annual basis per 100 foot bed? And this is super, super hard. Like, it's, oh man, in practice, this type of table is so freaking hard to make.
Because of all the variables.
Because of the records you need to keep.
Right, the amount of data you have to collect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas like for me, when I'm making a tincture, it's almost like it's like just a few things and like it's pretty stable costs.
Yeah, well, I think when you're making a tincture, there's ingredients that come into it, and there's like a very set amount of time that you're working on it.
Right.
It's easy to kind of compile all that information.
Whereas labor is hard to track.
Labor's super hard to track, and I used to have this app, and it's defunct, and I realize, like, I get why it's not popular, because the data exporting thing just didn't work. It was this app called Beet Clock, like vegetable, and it had all these categories of like things that you might be doing and all these vegetables that you would be doing it to, and whenever you're doing something, you would go on your phone and say like, I'm weeding the carrots, start, and you would stop when you were done. And I did that religiously for a whole summer, and I couldn't get the data.
Oh my
was
God.
so ridiculous.
I can recommend an app that I use.
I would love to hear. Yeah.
Okay, it's called Simple Time Tracker. You can create your own categories, and you can make edits. The exporting is super easy. You can export ranges. You can it'll also show you like give you like tables or a breakdown of like different tasks, and it's very simple to use.
I think I saw that amongst apps I was looking at.
Yeah,
while
Simple Time Tracker.
prepping for today. I once worked on a farm where it's so like the sheet that I just gave you is like a really high level of detail. And while I think some of that is useful for improving your efficiency in different aspects of your farm, it might be, I think there's an argument to make that it's beyond what you need to know to figure out your cost of production. And I worked on a farm once where at the end of every day, there was a sheet of paper, and it was just like, I don't remember exactly how it was laid out, but you had a set, it was like your name and the date. And then it was just a list, it's like free form. What did you do what crop were you working on? And how many hours did you spend working on it? Because I find that like, I'll be weeding something, I'm really like ADHD when I am farming sometimes, so I'll be like weeding this and I'll look and be like, oh, that needs to be done over there. And so I'll jump up and do that for 5 minutes, and like trying to track that in an app is nightmarish to me. So I think that if I like come up with a reasonable estimate at the end of the day, where I'm like, beets, I think I spent, maybe to the nearest quarter hour, maybe I spent like 3¼ hours, and just like do your best to guess at the end of every day, and don't care what you were doing. This could get you to like the same bottom line as what this sheet is telling you. As long as you can, at the end of the year, then, if you miss a day, your data is crap, which is bad. You have to be religious about doing this. You have to do it every single day, otherwise your data and your like costs are going to be off. So if you go this route, just be really diligent about it. At the end of the year, then you would have like, imagine I have a whole stack of sheets like this. An app would be better because the data would be entered for you already. But you have a whole stack of sheets like this. You take a morning and a cup of coffee to go through these, and you see that at the end of the year, my beet time added up to 23.5 hours or something like that. And then you could take that time and divide it, you know, equally amongst the number of growing units. They're using beds in this case to kind of get that hourly time spent growing, you know.
Yeah, it's some of these things, you know, you do to all your crops.
Totally.
Like fertilizer spreading. And then in order to figure out like how many hours that takes you, what, like divided by the percentage of your farm
Totally.
that crop takes up, which
Yeah.
is kind of annoying.
It is, and that was something that we did. There was like crop specific stuff, and then if there was time that you spent doing general stuff, you would write like general
Farm.
you know, general farm, and then, you know, like 2 hours. And anything that was in that general category, like, you know, let's say you need to work in the irrigation as a whole, or the fence, or, you know, whatever, you used that, and then allocated that time on a space
equally
basis.
to the percentage of that crop that took up.
Yeah, let's say beets were 20% of the farm
Right.
space, then I would allocate that time 20%. So
Right.
that's a way to do it. Like I said, this is something to aspire to. If you can get to this level, like, you're crushing it.
Yeah.
We're spending more time on this than you are for.
That's what the winter's for, right? I mean, it's really, really useful to know though, because like, what you can do with something like this is you can get yourself an hourly wage per crop. That's
And then
really
you know what to spend on labor.
But yeah, because that's what you have in yours.
well. No, I mean, like you might be paying your labor $15 an hour or $20 an hour or whatever, but like, come the end of the year, this number of hours were worked on beets. We made this much money. How much? You know, we made this much profit on
Right,
beets.
yeah.
What is our hourly wage on beets? In fact, I think I asked you. I wanted to have you guys do that. Let's see. Yeah, so you could look at this from a per hour basis. So let's do that. Let's see if we can figure out how much money per hour are we making on green beans in this example. Is that math that I did ahead of time?
Per hour per bed. Per 100-foot bed.
Yeah. Which I think it should work out to per hour, because I think the units would end up canceling out. Supposed to add up all these little tedious things. I mean, I got a number, but I was adding some of this up in my head, so curious to hear what you guys got.
Okay, I just added up all the stuff that looked like labor,
Yep.
and I got 186.1.
And you got what?
186.1.
Hours?
No. I was adding the totals of. Oh, was that?
I think it's a little confusing how they've laid out, because they switch units in the same
Yeah. So this
you know,
is.
they kind of group different units together.
So under labor,
Yeah.
I added up everything from cover crop down to weeding.
Yep.
And then I also added under harvest prep costs.
Yep. That 15 and then
The 150 and the. that's
Oh,
150.
you're doing money. Okay.
Well, because you asked how much.
Interesting. So I didn't think about
What was
doing
the
it that
question
way.
again?
I guess so. What I did, the question was how much money, like how much profit are you making per hour?
How much profit are you making? So,
Yeah. So what I did is I like you added up all that time, and it was like 17.8 hours. I may have missed something, and then I just divided the 140.27, which is the net income is the same as profit, divided by 17.8 hours, and I came up with $7.88 per hour.
Where are you getting hours? Oh,
Uh,
the unit?
Yeah, it's in the unit section. Let's just conclude that it is possible to, like, you can get an hourly wage on any crop that you're growing from this. I think another thing, like we were talking about earlier, Colin, the unit costing,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's related to this like idea of cost of production. What I wanted to see, I guess the next thing I wanted to have you guys try and calculate is how many green beans, let's say you're selling your green beans, let me make sure I get this. Oh, okay. What price would you need to sell your green beans at to break even?
$140.27. Oh,
So-
per bed.
Yeah, so you're let's assume we're gonna get 120 pounds of green beans.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that number divided by.
Yeah, so how much?
Okay. I was like, that
So $1.16 a pound.
$1 what?
And 16 cents a pound. Did I do that right? Did I do it
I
backwards?
think you need to get
It's a break even, so
yeah.
you have to.
So would I do the net income divided by? Oh, no. I want cost.
Cost, yep.
Total cost, so 158.
So 150 is just harvest and prep. You also have pre-harvest. You need to add those together to get the total cost.
Okay, so total cost, and it doesn't.
So total cost for the year, if you divide that by the amount you're growing, it'll tell you how much do you need to charge to break even.
So $1.74 per pound.
Should be. I got $1.83, but let's see. It would be that $219.73 is your total costs
Okay.
divided by 120.
So this is how.
So that would tell you.
I missed the way
Yeah.
ownership cost.
No worries. I mean, so that's a useful number to know. How much do I need to charge in order to break even?
Well, was it $1.70 or
$1.83.
$1.83? Okay.
Another question you can ask yourself is, you have let's say you've estimated how much it's going to cost you to produce one bed of green beans, but you haven't harvested them yet. How about if I'm selling at $3 a pound, how much do I need to yield to break even? That's another question you can answer. We don't need to go through the math. I think it's instructive enough just to know that you can do these things.
Can you go back to that first question?
Yes.
Just for my feeble brain.
Yeah.
So the second one is 73 pounds. So you need to harvest 73.24 pounds to break even from the labor cost.
Yep. The first question I had was, what do you need to charge? So if you're growing 120 pounds of green beans
Per 100 foot bed.
per 100 foot bed, what do you need to charge per pound? So it's like how much money per pound do you need to break even? And you know that, so the inputs in this is that you have 219. There's a column down here to help you out by having total cost annual. It's 219.73 is the total cost per bed. And if you divide that by 120 pounds per bed, the beds will cancel out and give you $1.83
Which is also there.
per pound. Yep.
But I thought it was a labor question, that first question.
Right, yeah.
I see.
The first question that I
The first
asked?
question you asked was a labor question.
Oh, the first
It was just like posed, it was posed,
Yeah.
it was like a non-intuitive for my brain way. of
Yeah.
thinking about things.
Well,
It
how much
was,
do you make per hour?
how much do you make per hour?
How much do you
That's-
make per hour?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so you needed to add up.
Could you do that? Matt?
Yeah.
Thanks. How much do you make per hour?
So when I say, there's two ways that you could take how much do you make. You could look at the basic income before expenses, but I mean how much are you profiting per hour? Like how much money is going into your pocket per hour spent on green beans? So the net profit per bed on green beans is 140.27. So that's dollars.
So here's my question.
Yeah.
If it's your labor,
Mhm.
Well, you,
are we gonna take the expenses, the $10 an hour that's already factored in here as part of the cost
Mhm.
to figure out your profit? If it's your labor, so you're not directly paying yourself that, so would it be an expense then?
It's, I mean,
When
if
factoring it in here?
well, I think it's useful for if you ever decide to
to hire
hire
hire.
someone.
But yeah, but in this case, if it's you, this is your labor and you're trying to figure out what you make per hour, would you not take that labor expense out of your
You-
cost
Exactly.
in order to determine what you're actually making to do it?
Yep. Exactly right.
Okay.
And this is kind of a way, like what you're talking about is a way to get at like how much do I charge? Because you might find, let's say you don't want to make $10 an hour. Let's say you want to make $25 an hour or $30 an hour. Like that's how much you yourself want to make. If you put those numbers into this and you're the one working,
Then you know what to charge.
that break-even number is what to charge.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean that's like a pretty, again you have to have data to support it, but that's like a really objective way to set your prices. Do you want me to still go through this?
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah. So 100, like let's say now that you are not the one working, let's say you're hiring minions at $10 an hour, and you want to know how much profit per labor hour am I making?
Right.
Yep. So you say, okay, I'm making $140 profit per bed,
Right.
and I'm going to divide that by, I think I said, when I added it up, it was like 17.8 hours. I may have been wrong on that, but
Well, there's a
Yeah, it's 18.25.
is it?
oh,
Okay. I believe you.
where does it say, is it the dollar per unit column? Is that the one that we're looking at that's labor hours? Because I don't see a column that says hours anywhere.
Oh, it's in the, it's
Quantity in units.
units, like hours shows up as,
Oh, there it is. Sorry, I see it now. Thank
Yep.
you.
so 18.25, and then whatever that divides to.
So if you don't do this,
Mhm.
how do you find out how much the somebody's
Look at what your neighbor's charging. Or you think, because like you're at the beginning of a farm, you don't have any of this information. And so what most of us do is we go around and like see what people are charging at farmers market, see what the roaming root is charging, see what Fred's is charging, and just kind of get an idea of like,
that's not being sold, you've got
gotta, you know, that a good idea is to kind of like either put yourself into the shoes of the consumer, or ask friends. You know, if you poll a bunch of people. Yeah, I mean, just be like, how much? You know, ask a bunch of people, how much would you be willing to pay for X?
So the answer is 7.68 hours or dollars per hour,
Pretty low.
which means if you're hiring at $10 an hour, at least they're
But you're making a profit
Yeah,
on
you're-
their hours, so
you're
that,
making- yeah.
that's what this number is. If you're paying somebody $10 an hour, then you're profiting
Oh.
$7 per day hour.
Bingo.
And that's important
That-
because
is that
if you're
taking-
paying someone, you're paying taxes
Yep.
on their income.
wait. Does it say in here somewhere that there's $10 an hour going to somebody?
Yes.
Yeah. It's
So
in-
unit
$1 per
total
unit.
on the right side.
150 harvest labor. Okay.
Yep.
Cool. Yeah. God. Yeah.
But that part's important because you wanna make sure that if you're hiring someone to do something, then you're gonna have to pay taxes on their income as an employer. And so you wanna make sure that your
Yeah.
expenses are covered.
And what's that?
on the
Another
labor.
30% or something?
I don't know.
Depends.
You pay at least, you're gonna pay their FICA, which is 7.6 or something like that. And small farms are, at least if you are mostly exempt from unemployment taxes, and
Medicare.
you're not exempt from Medicare, but you are exempt from unemployment insurance.
Okay.
That's good.
And workman's comp, potentially.
Right.
But if your workers get hurt, they are on the hook. Let's go back to the sheet with the skinny columns on it, but on the back, where it says partial budget analysis. This stuff is really freaking cool. I'm so excited about this. Like, thinking about it this way is totally new to me. But it's like not rocket science, but I think it's a really neat way of comparing different ways of doing things. So what a partial budget does, or what they're calling a partial budget, is it allows you to compare two different practices on a farm and see how the money works out with those two ideas. And this can be pretty much anything. Like, it could be, do I want to plant, like in this example, do I want to plant salad greens or green beans in this bed? Or you could say, like, should I buy this tractor implement? Do I want to hire somebody to do this, or buy this expensive piece of equipment? I did come up with an example that after we go through these. So, like, the basic way that these are set up, I think some of their labels are a little bit confusing. Basically, you create this, this table looking at two sides of a decision, and they're calling one side the positive effects, and so this is like, if I make this change, what positive effects is this going to have? So this is like positive effects of change, positive of change. And the other side is negative, and it's like, what are the negative effects of staying the same? So up at the top, it's asking you, will you make any more money? So it's like, does your income or revenue change at all with the change? So they're calling it, what did I call it? They're calling it increases in revenue. Increase in money with change.
So is that amount the actual increase?
No, this
Or
is
is
this
that
is not the
maybe
increase.
different?
This is just the straight money. So like,
Okay, so that's why it's confusing.
yeah, in this example, you see the $150. That means that
You will make.
you're making $150 per bed of salad greens. Period. If you make the change. On the other side is I mean, they're calling it the decrease in revenue, and that's why I think it's a little bit confusing. It's like how much money, it's the income, maybe I should just call this like income with change.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
And then that side is also the same scenario though. This is just the negative effect of the same decision.
Yeah.
So maybe you should change your title.
Well, it gets the next column down. It gets a little bit confusing.
Okay.
So you have the income with the change, income without the change. On the next line down, you're going to have the costs without the change.
That's why it's.
Yep. And nothing is negative here. You're all additive. It's only additive. Well, I'll call this
No,
costs.
they call it like decreases in cost.
So basically, this account, the scenario here is that they've been growing green beans in this bed.
Uh-huh.
That's the right side, that, what he's saying, basically staying the same. They've
Okay.
been growing green beans, so this is what they could have sold in green beans in this bed.
Mhm.
The left-hand side is if they decide to change and go with salad greens.
That's all it is.
Yeah, that's all this is.
But it makes sense to use.
And so that's why you're saying that their titles are confusing.
Yeah, it's a little bit confusing.
Because you should say, it's saying the same. I understand that.
Yep. So like in this example, it's like you have the increase in revenue, or like how much money am I going to make if I'm doing salad greens?
Yep.
So that's the change. And how much did it cost me
Yep.
to grow green beans?
So you're doing like an income statement for the crop.
Kind of, yeah.
Plus you're cutting out.
For income and expenses.
And on the other side, you're saying, I'm not going to make this money from green beans.
Right. And I'm also not going to spend as much money.
I'm not going to make this money from green beans, but I am going to spend this labor cost growing salad greens. So see how they switch? That's why it's a little bit confusing.
This is why accountants get this double line, but it's not.
Yeah, that is confusing.
Yeah, that's why it's the double line there. So like look down to the next one. This example is, it doesn't have any change in income because you're growing the same amount of potatoes. It's like, what happens if I buy a potato harvester versus paying somebody to harvest the potatoes? The income doesn't change, so they've just left that line blank. On the one side, they have the costs without the change, so $100 hours in labor at $10 an hour, so $1,000 is that cost without the change. On the negative side is the increase in costs with the change. So you have a little bit of labor, but now you have depreciation, and you have taxes and insurance and repairs and maintenance. But when you add all the sides up and look at the difference, you find that the positive side far outweighs the negative side. So in this scenario, buying a harvester versus paying for 100 hours of labor is saving you $600 a year.
Gotcha. So is the reason they organized it that way just to keep all the negative numbers on one side and all the positive numbers?
Yeah, I think it's just like this is what happens if we make the change. This is what happens if we don't make the change.
You have the positives higher, then you make the change.
Yeah, I think it's misleading to call it positive because it's like, well, it might not be a good thing, but
Right, like
Yeah.
in the salad greens.
like in the salad greens example. So yeah, like in that, when they make the
It should
change,
just be called effects of changing
yeah.
overall.
Mhm.
Or yes or no.
And then
change
increases
versus
and decreases.
no.
But like I guess I just want you to know what's going on here, so that when you take this home and you want to try this on your own, because I think this is, it's really simple, but I think it's a really powerful way of thinking about the way that you do something.
It's
'Cause-
just the
Make
cost
decisions.
comparison.
yeah,
That's all it is.
it's all it is.
Right, yeah.
I don't know why it just
Do it, I
it
do
just
it for everything. I do it for like, if I'm buying curriculum for the kids.
Mhm.
Like, I base it on like reviews and like how they're doing, whether it'll increase their grades, if it's.
I think I do that to a certain extent, but what I hadn't been doing was thinking about like fully thinking out both scenarios and objectively comparing them. And I think that this does a nice method of that. It's like
Yeah.
presenting everything. And so I really like this.
Yeah, I never thought about, how they're flipping it.
Mhm.
Like I've just always kept one thing in one column and one thing in another, but that makes sense that there's things that you would need to.
So I set out an example. Of course, this is taking longer than I thought it would. Running out of time. I set out an example, and I'm just going to give you the parameters. And I think one of these sides of paper is blank. I want you to try to do this cost analysis thing on this example. And I'll write up some of these things. So, I love carrots, so let's talk about carrots. So let's say you've been selling carrots at the farmer's market and the roaming route approaches you and asks you to sell 100 pounds. So I'm going to say roaming route wants 100 pounds per week. And they're going to pay you $2.40 a pound. What you have been doing is you've been at the farmer's market and you can sell carrots at $3.50 a pound. But to sell 100 pounds of carrots, it takes, what did I say? 4 hours. So 4 hours at the farmer's market to sell 100 pounds of carrots at $3.50 a pound. And
You value your time.
you're valuing your time at $17.50 an hour.
But your hours would be different for
Let's say
because you have to work the market.
you don't have to. Let's say I mean,
You'd have to pay somebody else, and then your cost would be.
right? Well,
This
how
is
about,
either or
this?
scenario.
Okay.
This is an either or scenario. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's say.
Like you can only grow
Yeah.
100 pounds per week. You just decide.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, this doesn't have to be an either or scenario. I think like you're asking a good question about like
Yeah.
how do you account if you're going to be paying somebody to be there anyway.
Right.
It does change the calculus a little bit.
Right. Will it be there in the 1750, right? Is that the cost that we
But
calculated before?
you're saying that theoretically you only have 100 pounds to sell.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's say you have 100 pounds to sell.
Okay. for the point of applying. this
Yeah,
concept.
but you know,
That's a good point.
it's worth thinking about that. I mean, we could work it into the scenario. You know,
Wait, not yet.
No, not
Let
yet.
me just see if I can get this.
Yeah,
Keep it
Sounds like
simple
Katie
first.
meant it.
yeah.
Maybe if I can do this properly, then this may.
I want all the columns. Oh, you want to put it in this?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
first one is increases.
You're
in
just looking at the revenue per week.
Right now, we're looking at the first scenario, right? Positive effects and changes. So revenue wants 100 pounds per week. At 200 each. It would be sale would be 100 pounds times.
Oh.
Is there any packaging difference?
Nope, no packaging difference.
That's just the one thing.
And decreases in cost. Is that left empty?
Yep. I left it empty.
Oh, okay.
Can't leave things empty.
That's where I was like, there's gonna be differences.
No, there is no cost.
But I think it is, after we work through this, it is worth, just, also, the other thing that I left out is that the farmer's market charges 10%.
Oh,
It's true.
That's what, okay, I'm like, there's way too many, like, variables missing here.
you messed with me, Sam. I was almost done.
I'm sorry.
I'm not writing with every single pen over here. Killing me, Cletus.
I feel like I'm not either.
You're basically not at this.
Right, yeah.
I'm just stuck on this.
Okay, so for the right-hand side, decreases in revenue,
Yep.
is that also $240?
Yep. That's what I got.
Okay.
Or, no, sorry. The right-hand side. So,
Left-hand side is $240.
yeah, the
Right-hand side would be
350.
Oh,
Okay, so-
okay, that makes sense.
Yep.
So we assumed that once a week the farmer's market was open.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
that was. my-
Oh, I'm
not
sorry.
saying
Yeah,
this,
it's
so I'm-
the hard part of trying to think of these examples.
Yeah, well, you threw that out in there, I was like, why didn't you do
So,
that? Make it go.
it's confusing because it calls it decreases in revenue.
Right.
But yeah, I understand now. This
They're
is
right,
just,
'cause
this
they
is
wanna
just
show
literally
you
the other,
Switch,
this is just the other student.
they want you to switch it, I've never put. It makes no sense because I never know what the number that. Okay.
So it's like a $5 part.
Yeah, so you. Have you guys ever heard the thing about how to tell the difference, how to know which word to use, affect versus defect?
Is it effect applies to like a bigger or like multiple like or like an environmental thing, whereas effect affects like an individual?
Defect is the noun.
Yeah,
Oh.
rating.
Raven.
Affect, verb, effect, noun.
Ah, I'm like, I think
That
there's
was right
a
on my
word.
Affect.
I don't think I've
Wait,
heard
what does that
that
have to do
since
with
grade
ravens?
school.
What does that have to do with ravens?
That was beautiful. It was, I was like, it's in there. There's a word.
You need to forget about the R, but like, affect, verb, effect, noun.
I'm totally.
Oh, it's an acronym. Okay, yes, yes,
Because we
yes.
talked about
Raven.
this.
Affect
So
is
really
a verb.
it's
Oh, it's to affect something. Yeah, whereas effect
So
is a
$5
thing.
$5 is the change on this. So
Yep.
realistically, you're talking 5 cents a pound.
Yeah. It's not huge.
It's marginal.
But like you were saying, maybe there's more to consider here.
Right, time.
Maybe costs with the change, maybe we're still paying this $70 and then in that case,
Like it still takes us 4 hours to like package them,
well, let's say the package, I think if you're packaging,
transport them.
if you're packaging 100 pounds worth of carrots, it's gonna take you the same amount of time no matter where they're going. But there's a little transport time.
Right.
Maybe you're still going to the market, and so you count some labor time in too, and that would change things, like.
Right. Right. That was a really fun
It's very it's super simple, but at the same time, it's a little hard to wrap your head
activity.
around.
The label screwed my brain.
Yeah, but I think this is just like
It is simple.
yeah, it's called partial budgeting.
Partial.
If you remember anything, just remember partial budgeting to look it up later. And this is like a very useful tool for any business.
And in the level 200 class, we're going to learn about combining percentages of each budget, right? Like you were saying, but if you want to do both.
I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't show my spreadsheets. I could email them to you
Yeah,
if you
always
wanted
email them
to.
to
Yeah.
us, and we can enjoy them.
You know,
In
so
the comfort of our home.
it would just be looking at cash flow budgets month.
Cool.
I mean, there is a table from the IRS that'll. I mean, but you can always find that. It's just a table that shows you if you have a farm building, this is how many years it should take to depreciate. If you have a tractor, this is how many years you should take to depreciate. So there's a whole table out there that tells you, from a tax perspective, how to depreciate things, which, like we talked about, is different than a bookkeeping perspective.
Cool. Well, thank you, Sam.
Man,
This is like enlightening.
I hope you're not more confused than when you came. And I'm sorry if you are.
Your spreadsheet yours on the amortization that you're talking about right here.
Yeah, there you go.
Do you have a good resource on like how to do that?
Publication 225.
225, okay,
Yeah.
perfect. I already sent that
I'm
to
not
you.
going to say that it's always comprehensible, but it's
Covers a lot.
it's in there if you read it enough times.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's, Joe and I kind of, we've been talking, the more that we learn with this, the more kind of, my garden fails as I do more of this, I'm like, there's no way we're gonna
Yeah.
grow anything and clear land and kind of looking on 2 full-time jobs.
Yeah.
In the same season, so I put away my seed orders, I'm gonna do some flowers,
Yeah.
What's the name of your farm?
I don't know,
That's a weird name.
I
I don't know. That's a good one.
Sorry
Yeah,
for making
we
you drag
talked
this
about
out.
a couple things.
No.
I do
You're good. You're totally good,
baking
man.
on the side
This is
and
so good.
bakery aisle, so I want to think like a veggie aisle
Yeah.
farm.